are you listening to? Straight Talk with Kim and Carolyn.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Kim and Carolyn. I'm Kim.
I'm Carolyn.
So we have a good dose of red meat, but also just practical stuff that we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to start with Jake Oakes from Liberty United Organization. He's going to give us a report on the recent FreedomFest that was right close to
that
us.
We missed.
And we
in
missed.
Vegas,
and where were we? Because I don't think that I was doing anything more fun.
Hey, I was gardening.
Okay, well, still, you know what? Those flowers can wait because the Freedom Fest was just right in our backyard practically. And then we're going to talk with Rusty Cannon from the Utah Taxpayers Association, where he's going to talk to us about 90 proposed tax increases. It's a great time. Everybody has a lot of extra money in their pockets.
Yeah.
Let's give it to the government.
I've noticed that. You know, everyone around me keeps talking about how cheap goods are and how they wish they could give
They
more
wish they could give more to the government. Yeah. So, okay. So let's bring on Jake. Jake Oakes, who is a grassroots activist and organizer in sort of the freedom movement, for lack of a better, I guess we could call it that. That's what it is. And just his own constitutional scholarly effort. And welcome, Jake. And tell us what we missed.
Oh, man. Missed the Freedom Fest? Well, you missed lifetime opportunity, really. not to throw salt on it, but no, it was what I like about Freedom Fest is not just the information you get to walk away with, but two things: just the quality of production. It's more than just a meeting of the minds and a conference. It really feels like a production. The quality and the details. It's very much a production they put on. But also another aspect I love about Freedom Fest is the networking that happens. And so these speakers and these figures who come in, they don't hide out in a green room.
They walk the crowds.
They go into the exhibit hall and they mingle. And so I had the chance to talk to some amazing people, including Sheriff Mack. Discussing how I feel like sometimes we get caught up in semantics on the Second Amendment, and told him how we've kind of missed the mark on the core idea, how the Constitution works, and how the entire gun regulation argument crumbles simply by the original Constitution, without even consideration of the extra protection of the Second Amendment. And then also had the pleasure of talking with Mike Lee as well as Rand Paul. That was really the highlight, was meeting Rand Paul.
So for people like you and me and probably Carolyn, that's celebrity to me about as good as it gets. Like I would much rather sit at the feet of Mike Lee than just about any celebrity I can think
Beyonce?
of. Yeah.
I'm kidding. That was a joke. Okay.
Yeah, but because it's important and they're doing good work.
That's right.
And I think those people are elevated in my mind and life more than what's being put on the radio So Jake was in his element because they're the political luminaries. And
so, Jake, I want you to take a minute and just talk to us about kind of what led you to this point. Tell us what you've been doing over the past couple years and why.
So let me start by saying I've always been conservative, but I considered myself a good citizen by getting out and voting, and then watching Fox News on occasion. There we go. I'm good.
You're most people, or you're a lot of people.
Yeah. Yes. COVID was definitely a wake-up call for me. immediately. I know some patriots that it was in the beginning, for some it was by springtime or summertime. They were like, okay, this is enough. Mm-hmm. Just immediately out the door, I was like, this is not right. I'm not any scholar. I wasn't studying the Constitution at this point, but I just knew this is not okay. The government does not get to put the American people under house arrest, period. So I discovered that Eric Mutzos was organizing rallies and protests, peaceful protests, to show there's other like-minded individuals, but also demonstrate the proper role of government. So I got involved helping Eric Mutzos with that.
Were they mostly peaceful protests or peaceful protests? I'm trying to get a visual right now.
Yeah, because there's different.
you know those mostly peaceful protests where cities burned down and people died?
If you want a visual, let me demonstrate. Mostly peaceful means the entire city's burning down.
Okay.
And then insurrection means people peacefully waving the American flag and gathering as families and being happy.
Okay. and maybe trespassing. Let's be clear, a little trespassing possibly going on there too. In insurrection. Only if you're not Colbert's staffers, though. That's not insurrection.
Only if you're not CNN in disguise.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So I come fall or winter 2020, I kind of said, well, that was good. I think it served a purpose doing the rallies, even though there was a lot of rah, rah, rah. I still think it served a purpose. It brought a community together. I think you've had strong conservatives. They've been at it for 50 years, like Gail Rosika. She's amazing. But this definitely brought a bigger community together. But then I said, there's got to be more. There's got to be something more. And I had this realization that I had been holding this up, the Constitution, saying, I support this, but I didn't really know it. Yeah. So I said, how can I support something that I don't know? And so I started diving into it and realized, holy cow, I realized how little I knew after I started studying. And it wasn't just like I didn't have it memorized. I'm talking about how we've been blocked from just even understanding some of the core principles of how we're supposed to operate.
Yeah.
And so that's where I started Liberty United, was an emphasis on teaching the Constitution, because I feel like the issues we face today, we're chasing after critical race theory, we're chasing after vaccine mandates, we're chasing after so many things. And I feel like the socialist government, whether it's Republican or whether it's Rhino or Democrat, the socialists in our government right now will be like a factory, just continually pumping out issues. And I said, let me get at the core. And I think all the issues we face are a direct result of us abandoning the Constitution.
Go ahead, Kim.
So, Jake, you're kind of a young guy. Couple kids, kind of young?
Yep. I've got 2 kids, got a 3-year-old girl, 6-year-old boy.
So
they're growing up quick.
So to me, it's just fun to watch this new generation of people, in your age bracket that are interested in government. And part of that's probably out of fear and anger of what previous generations have let happen to this country, and that you're stuck with in the next generation. But for me, it's the glimmer of hope that there are people like you that are studying the Constitution, and why, and how many people did we lose, listeners, when you start talking about studying the Constitution. But I know I've shared this story before, but I on this podcast, but it really was an impactful story to me, and I had a very small and intimate breakfast with our Utah Supreme Court Justice John Pierce, and he had just been recently appointed to our state high court. And at this breakfast, he shared that he was just reading everything he could find, looking for anything he could find. He was looking for diary entries, articles, books, any letters, anything that he could find that that would give insight to that period, our Utah founding period. And so I asked him, I said, so you're just kind of like a history buff or what? And he said, well, I mean, yeah, he likes history, but it's important for him as a justice who he is charged with reviewing policies and events around our Utah Constitution, that he has to understand what it means. And then he explained, and I could never do this justice, but explain that words are transient in meaning, and they can take on different contexts through time. You mentioned the Second Amendment earlier. Even the concept of militia has changed so much over time. But he said, so it's important to basically anchor down the meanings of things at the time that they were codified, at the time that they were put in stone. And that then becomes the lens. If we just viewed the Constitution as all the words just frequently changed and they mean what they mean today, we don't care what they meant 200 plus years ago.
Yeah.
Then we don't have anchors. We're all over the place. And I thought that was a wonderful thing. And it also helped me appreciate some of my, some of the people I look up to that are their own scholars and hobbyists on the Constitution and Founding Fathers and Federalist Papers and things like that. People like Representative Ken Ivory that just could preach to you the Constitution and in that historical perspective all day long, if people would listen. And then I understand why that means so much to someone like Ken Ivory, Justice Pierce's perspective on that, and now for me, why I go back to the Constitution more and I try to understand its original context, because it means something, and those are our anchors.
Yeah, and when you mention original context, that's a key concept, because so that in the legal world, especially Supreme Court, there's three main legal philosophies to interpreting the Constitution. That's constructionism, which is looking at strictly the words in the document, which doesn't sound too bad compared to the next one I'm going to mention, but what it's doing is leaving out context. And intent. The next one is living Constitution, and that's a very dangerous one. That's the attitude our Supreme Court has adopted for over 100 years now. It's kind of like saying there's no absolute. Right. The Constitution just bends and shapes to society over time.
Well, we have a brand new high court justice who can't define a woman. I mean, the word woman.
Well, and that is the result.
Hey, excuse her. She's not a biologist. Cut her some slack. She's not a biologist.
That truly is the result of generations of an inability to recognize that there is objective truth. Right? Yeah. Like there is truth.
Self-evident truth and eternal truth and
absolutely
biology.
And, the third philosophical approach is originalism. That is looking at the Federalist Papers, looking at other comments made by the Founding Fathers. What were they intending to do with this? What was their intentions? I think that Carolyn, you mentioned something important, and that is we're missing the idea that there is eternal truths. And when I have friends that call me up who want to catch up after a couple of years, and sometimes I get, "Hey, what's up, Mr. Politics?" Because I'm a whole lot more vocal. And I say, you know what? I hate politics. This is not about politics to me. This is a spiritual war, and this is a war on truth.
Yep. You know, I had a conversation with somebody recently who is used to be a conservative, I'll just say, and is becoming less and less of one. And we were talking about, just briefly, about the Constitution. And I said, well, you know, there was some discussion about political parties. I said, well, one believes in the Constitution and upholding the values and principles of the Constitution, and the other doesn't seem to. And his response was, well, you know, my thinking has progressed, and I think that we have to understand that the Constitution has to, it's the living document thing, has to change and progress. And I'm saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, that's all well and good. There is a process contained within the Constitution, which is the document on which one of the documents on which our country is founded, that allows you to make those changes. There's a process for making those changes. And if you are not willing to do the hard work required to make those changes, the fallback is, let's just pretend that document says something other than what it says, and let's not have any fidelity to what it actually says and means. And that is, I think, a complete blatant disregard, because you can't tell me that they don't know and understand that they are lying about what that Constitution says or represents.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, I love Thomas Jefferson said that the powers delegated to the federal government in the Constitution are few and defined. I know that before I started studying, I kind of viewed the Constitution as kind of this vague thing that was maybe a general guide, but had a lot of gray area until I realized, wait, this actually says what they can and cannot do.
Right.
We're told to believe that it's a lot more convoluted and complex process, but it really is. Is there delegated power? If not, they don't get to do it. It's literally that plain and simple. That's why it's so important that we are familiar with this, because how can we hold them accountable to those few powers that are actually delegated to them if we don't know? But, you know, I think sometimes we think of it as a lot more complex. In fact, right before I hopped on this interview, I was talking to somebody who she said that she doesn't like that some friends are criticizing some politicians she likes a lot that are mostly on our side, and they're very solid, but there's room for improvement on a couple things, but she doesn't like that they're criticizing them. And I said, well, I think sometimes we could be more effective in our approach. However, the idea that sometimes I see the idea that, you know what, nobody's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, yes, we're not perfect people, but you can follow the Constitution to a T. And I put it this way. I say, if you work a 9 to 5, do you think you could get away with telling your boss, I'm just going to half-ass it today because I'm not perfect? You could not get away with that.
Right.
You could be imperfect, but still follow through on responsibilities.
Yeah, that is very true. So tell us about one or two of the speeches that you heard or conversations that you were able to have. Although, let me say, I forgot this. So the month of July, I am all about freedom. Hey, I'm about freedom all the time, but I'm especially about freedom during the month of July. And I had to, with having you on to talk about FreedomFest, I had to wear my freedom t-shirt. And so I just want to add to the spirit of what we have going on here today. So tell us about some of your discussions or speeches that you heard at Freedom Fest.
Sure. Freedom Fest is cool because some parts of the day, everybody's together in the main auditorium listening to a presentation on the main stage. And then there's also breakout sessions where you'll have maybe 10 different presentations happening at the same time. You go choose a class to go sit in. But one of the, I mentioned Rand Paul, and one of the discussions that I had was bringing up to Rand Paul the idea of states' rights and nullification. So I asked him to kind of what we could do to restore the idea of nullification. He danced around it at first, said that it's kind of looked at as a radical idea, but then ultimately admitted that states do have that sovereignty. Mm-hmm. And I just always come back to the 10th Amendment. If something's not laid out in the Constitution, they don't get to try to squeeze and bend what they want. It goes back to the states. You have to let the states decide for themselves on those.
Yeah, there was a really interesting conversation that I had during my campaign at one point, and there were a few issues. I can't even remember what they were, but it was a couple of issues. And somebody mentioned, well, these, you're talking a lot about federal issues. And my response was, oh, whoa. These issues have been taken over by the federal government. These are not federal issues. I think it was abortion and firearms regulation, right? Mm-hmm. These are issues. First of all, we have some problems when it comes to regulating firearms at all. But these are issues that the state is grappling with and needs to. And the fact that you believe them to be federal issues is evidence of what has gone on in this country for the past 100 years, right? We're programmed to believe that the federal government is meant to solve problems that it was never given the right to even touch.
Well, excuse me, we've seen the court handle some things, the Supreme Court handle some things, looking through that constitutional federalism lens, right? We saw them basically uphold the Second Amendment, which is their purview, is that constitutional enumerated few and defined protections of the under the federal government, and said, yeah, okay, we are going to protect people and on that issue. And then on the abortion issue, they said this is not a federal issue. This is not one of those things that are few and defined. This has to go back to states. And I saw so many people erroneously comparing the two. Oh, yeah, it's a federal issue on this, but not on this. Oh, that's right. They got that right.
And most people, when it comes to the overturning of Roe and Casey, do not, we talked about this. They do not even understand what that decision was.
Right. It didn't change abortion law. It just said who gets to make that law.
Yeah.
States.
And can we just add to this the fact that, so I was having a text conversation with somebody today about some legislation that Congress just voted on. And the defense that a lot of the Utah delegation is giving for their vote is, well, it's already in the law. Oh, wow. We are very confused about the Constitution, the Supreme Court, the role, the Congress. So there's a lot of education that needs to go on here. As we wrap this up with you and finish up, would you tell us what your plans are going forward? How are you going to impact the state and the people in the state in a positive way and help them to understand the things that you've been able to learn over these past couple years?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And And I'm going to say this is I've been very focused on events. People say, why don't you just publish educational material? Why do you keep wasting everybody's time doing events? But there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of resources out there. People aren't seeking them out. So I decided I was going to go to people. Now that I've got that following, now I'm trying to build out some educational resources on the website. But the focus is going to be focused on, instead of just trying to get you to memorize word for word in the Constitution, I want you to understand just some key principles. And one of those is understanding that even though you're just one person, you are we the people, and we are the highest authority in the country. We forget that, but we are the highest authority, and the Constitution grants us the ability. If we focus on local, too many times we try to fix things on the federal level. But if we go bottom up, and if we focus trying to fix things local and then push back to the national government from the local level, we're going to be more effective. And so there's a few things I'm going to demonstrate to people of real solutions we can do.
Awesome. I love it. Actual real application and problem solving. Where can people find out more about you and your organization, Jake?
Yep. You could go to our website, unitingliberty.com, or Facebook, Liberty United.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us tonight again. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing around the state.
Absolutely. You guys have a good one.
Thanks. You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, now we have Rusty Cannon with the Utah Taxpayers Association. He delivered the really exciting news that the people
we're jumping up and down.
We're facing about 90 tax increase proposals.
And let's be clear, it's not 90 for one individual.
No, but 90 across jurisdictions. But for some people, it is multiple. They're getting hit by their city, their water district, maybe another special district, their school district. So we have Rusty on now to come and scare us all and tell us what we do now.
And Rusty is president of the Utah Taxpayers Association.
Did
you say that?
So welcome and tell us what this is all about. Why is it happening now?
Yeah, that's thanks. It's not a great news that we share, but it's the same time every year. Taxing entities, they're on a fiscal year do this. So that's where their fiscal year ends at the end of June. So your cities, school districts, and most water districts. Now, if they want to exceed the certified rate, then the tax rate, then they issue these notices, kick off the truth in taxation process where they have to notify property owners and also have these public hearings. We usually get about 60 or so entities on average, kind of as a general rule every year. But this year there's about 90. And so it's a big uptick for, anybody's guess as to reasons, whether it's pent up need after the pandemic or inflation that they're fighting. There's a host of excuses or reasons that people will cite, but it's a lot. And as you guys mentioned, in fact, I talked to one taxpayer the other day. He's getting hit with, I think, 5 on his property, whether it's school district, city, both water districts, and one other. So it's starting to add up for a lot of people.
And it's really good timing to have all these governments reach into our wallets a little bit more because we have extra in there these days. Just kidding, not really.
And we're all really happy about it when it's the government on top of that.
Right. But about an average of $5,000 a year more Utahns are paying
just in basic expenses,
just covering expenses. So Rusty, you said a phrase. Let's make sure people know what that means. Utah has been recognized for 14 years in a row as number one on our tax policy, number one for economic outlook. So we really do well here in this state comparatively. We can always do a little bit better, but we lead. And one of the ways we lead is through a model policy called Truth in Taxation. What does that mean? And I need to have it at like a 5th grade level.
Sure. So this was a law that we helped formulate back in 1985. and got it passed. And it was the result of what they went through in the late 70s and early 80s, which is what we're going through now, which was record high inflation at the time. So essentially what it is that as taxing entities, whether it's a city or a school district or whatever, they get the same revenue that they got the previous year, plus new growth. But if they want to increase the revenue or raise taxes and get more revenue, then they have to go through the truth in taxation process, because as property values go up, the tax rate floats down automatically, so that the entity just gets the same amount of revenue. And generally that keeps those taxes from going up. But then if they want to exceed that rate and increase these taxes, then they go through this process, which is what we're discussing now. So Utah has a revenue neutral system, so that the revenue is supposed to stay the same, because as property values go up, the tax rate goes down, versus in other states, most other states that haven't copied us, when property values go up and the rate stays the same, that's an automatic windfall to local governments.
To government, and the property owner is paying through the nose too at the same time.
Yeah.
So there, so Utah leads in this way, and so we frequently have people say, well, the whatever the governmental jurisdiction is they're adding more property owners, more development. All of that should just kind of keep feeding the government. But because we have this truth in taxation, it really does kind of keep that equilibrium. However, ever so often, then there's the Taxpayers Association recommends that there's an adjustment for inflation, because $1 10 years ago is not the same as $1 today, clearly.
Yeah. It's usually 5 to 8 years on average is what we think is the sweet spot, right? Because they do need to recapture inflation over time. The beauty about the truth in taxation law is they have to do it out in the open. They have to justify this to taxpayers, have these hearings, have communications as to how much the raise will be on each property owner, and justify the need, versus the way that it used to be. It was just automatic. It was like, oh, hey, sorry, yeah, they're up 7% on you, and there's no explanation. But they do have to go through this process and do it in the open, and that's the design of the system.
That's great. So, because then it makes them have to relook at their budgets and ask all the hard questions and face the public.
And
again.
it makes them less willing, right, to do that often. Right.
It is, yes, because, the issue we have is that there are some cities, or entities around the state that raise taxes, almost every year, and that's wrong. And their citizens sort of get numb to it, so to speak. But hopefully in most jurisdictions, people show up and get upset. I'd say that's the vast majority, of areas in Utah. People do get upset about this, but there's those odd cities where they keep raising taxes and no one seems to be stopping them.
Are they turning over their councils every 2 to 4 years as well?
So I got a text.
No. The biggest culprits, and the ones that always score the worst on our metrics as far as city government burden on people of taxes, it's always Salt Lake City. And South Salt Lake is second always, but no surprise as to why.
Yeah.
But they're always at the worst.
Well, and their leaders are really good at lots of management functions in that city.
Well, they hire a lot of managers, so I would assume they are good at management functions.
Okay, so on our audio, nobody can see our sarcastic faces.
Yeah, this is true. So watch us, and then you'll know what we really mean when we speak. I have a friend who texted me today, and she said, something weird is going on. I don't know about her primary residence, but she has 2 other residences that aren't anywhere near each other, not anywhere near the same counties. All 3 of the properties she owns are within Utah, though. She said both of her, I almost said additional homes, non-primary residences, each of them increased by $700, the tax. She said, what's going on? It's the exact same amount. What are they doing? I said, I actually have no idea. But tell us what this process looks like. When these taxes go up, what is it that citizens of those communities, members of those communities can do, and how can they make their voices heard?
So that's a great question. So what they should do and can do is, as soon as they get these notices, and they're arriving now in short order.
Where are they coming from? Where are we going to see those notices?
The notices are sent out by the county, but it's not because the county is doing the taxes. They're just the messenger at this point. But it's their property tax notice. It'll come in the mail, and then there's also notices that they have to put in the newspaper. That's less applicable than it was 30 years ago. But
and is it like a 3-point font, like in a tiny corner?
No, it has to be big. It has to be a pretty noticeable. That was the way it was designed. It had to be pretty. They call them, the nickname at the time was a tombstone ad, because the idea was that it was the tombstone or the death of their political career by putting it in the paper. And so that was the nickname. But so those are the notices that are given. But what they can do and should do, as you guys know, in any legislative process or with a committee, the work is done before the meeting. And so long before these truth and taxation hearings, you need to let your city council members or school board members know how upset you are, or ask for justification as to why they're doing it. You have to engage in that process now, and also show up to the hearing. That helps as well, obviously, for them to feel the heat. But a lot of work needs to be done before it, so they could possibly reconsider their decision.
So your basic civic engagement, but one of the benefits of the Utah Taxpayers Association is you have gathered a lot of that information, and you've put it on your UtahTaxpayersAssociation.org. Did I get that right?
Yes, UtahTaxpayers.org. Yep.
UtahTaxpayers.org, where you can go look this up and see if you are any of the jurisdictions that you're taxed by are proposing these taxes, and you have provided the date and the time, right?
Yeah, date and time. You'd need to go to their website and look for the location. It's typically at City Hall or at the school district offices. But yeah, we have the date and time at least on there.
Okay, so any of these problematic to you? Do any of these stand out as, probably shouldn't be happening to the people?
Or you at least have questions.
Or at least you have questions, yeah.
Yeah, one we have a question on, and we haven't been able to contact any folks yet, is Jordan School District.
Shoot, it's a pretty mine.
Yeah, so there's a pretty big hike by them, and with all the funding that's gone to education, we're not quite sure why that one's coming right now.
That's a 26.3%, by the way. 26.3%.
It's okay. They're probably hiring more diversity administrators. So I think we can assume where that money's going. Yeah.
So, and the other one is Provo City School District, and then I'm trying to think of some others. There's some others that are large percentages, but they're small towns, and we're not quite sure what's going on, and we haven't checked with them. But like one city in Summit County, Oakley, Utah, has a 280% increase.
Wow.
We're not quite sure what's going on there. There's probably some backstory to it, but they've reached out to us, but we just haven't responded yet. Maybe they want to explain why. But those are some of the ones that stick out the most. And there's others that it's been a long time since they've done truth and taxation, and they probably do need to catch up, and they've kept it modest. And there are a few of those where, we examine it, we talk to them, and we think, well, okay, this is probably about right. But those are few.
Yeah, I'm going to be jumping on your website when I get home, because now I'm very curious to see what my community is doing.
So, Rusty, tell us quickly about Utah Taxpayers Association and what you have to offer to the public, to members. Do you advocate for the citizen taxpayer or for the business taxpayer?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we are celebrating our 100-year anniversary this year. It was founded in 1922.
What? Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, when the income tax was coming to Utah and taxes were starting to pile on, essentially a bunch of taxpayers got together, individuals and businesses, formed the association and started publishing the newsletter, which we have published monthly since January of 1923.
Wow.
Called Taxpayers. So we advocate for good tax policy in Utah, and we fight for all taxpayers, individuals and businesses, from the smallest to the largest taxpayers in the state.
And how do people find out more information? I guess we have the website. Do you have any social media accounts for the Taxpayers Association that they can follow?
Yes, we do. We're on Twitter and Facebook. We could probably do a better job at using those, but we are there. And our website's the best place to go to get
Okay.
to get information. Yeah.
And they can subscribe to the newsletter.
Yes.
And then do you have, I know as a state legislator, I would go to an annual, what was it called?
Like legislative.
So we have 2 conferences a year. We have a pre-legislative conference in January, and then a one in May called our Taxes Now conference to kind of before and after the session. And that's a great resource for tax professionals, elected officials, law. It's basically everybody that has to do with anything taxes in the state attends that. So we do those as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for publishing that list. That made it easy for us to go defensively open our mailbox and
You've checked. I haven't checked yet.
Yeah, you're Draper?
Yeah.
Is Draper getting hit? Is Carolyn going to get hit? Canyons District?
Canyons District is not, but I'm trying to think of this. It depends on which city you're in. I don't believe Draper was on the list. It's such a long list. I'm now losing track of who's on it. But,
Too many to remember.
We've organized it by county on our list, so you can go right
Okay.
to Salt Lake County and see pretty quickly.
Okay. I will be checking that out.
Great. Well,
Good.
thank you
Thank
so
you so
much. Thanks
much.
for all of your good work, and thanks for joining us, Rusty.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks, you too.
So this is what it always just comes down to is people being informed and
Yes.
and really this is the essence of America too, and our state is really good at the transparency. So it's very hard for government, at least if they're complying with the law, to sneak stuff in. There is this opportunity if you're watching.
Yeah, see, that's the issue. I think that for so long, so many people just generally have felt confident in living their lives and not worrying too much about government. And I think that's changing. I literally have somebody who I know has put a lot of time and money into fighting for causes of freedom in this state over the past year. And he admitted to me the other day he's never voted in his life.
Wow,
And there is something that has awakened within a whole lot of people these last couple of years.
Absolutely.
And trust in government has gone down. And he said, I felt like I lived in Utah. Things are always going in the right direction. I trust the people we elect and the people around me who elect them. Yeah. I have felt good, and no more.
No more.
No more.
Well, and so this is where groups like Liberty United and people like Jake who did sort of kind of wake up in that time and said, I want to help other people understand what's going on too. Your organization can
Freedom Front of Utah. Yes, that it was founded by a number of tech entrepreneurs who realized that there is a hole kind of in the business community for advocacy for individual liberties and free markets, free enterprise. So I run that organization. We just started late last year, and we're working and have worked on a number of legislative issues protecting and respecting individual liberties and free markets. And we continue to work with not only government officials, but educate those people in the community who are beginning to realize that there are problems they had not contemplated in their state and in their government and in their local communities oftentimes as well, and are looking for avenues of involvement. And so freedomfrontofutah.org, or reach out to me. We'd love to have you join us. We have an exciting conference coming up in a few months. I'll talk about as
nice.
We get some details worked out. And we just want to make sure that people are informed and that we are really using the knowledge and influence that we all have when we come together to ensure that Utah remains the successful and prosperous place that it has been.
I mean, because we can lose that pretty quickly. And so, and the nth degree of this too is to run for office, which you and I have both done. And after these 90 entities propose their tax hikes, most of those are going to have their elections next year. So times 5 or 7-ish people times 90. There's going to be opportunities for people to run next year in municipal elections.
And can I just make one quick point about how quickly things can change? So I've talked about this before. I don't know if I've talked about it on the podcast, but truly. So I grew up in upstate New York, about 4 hours outside of the city. And when I was growing up, we would not venture into the city. It was a hellhole. And I have a younger brother who's 12 years younger than I am. And at the time that he was growing up, my family started going into the city more. Well, that was Giuliani and post-Giuliani times. I understand that it has descended into much of what it was before. That took years to clean up, massive effort. And within 2 years, I don't know how much truth there is to that. I know it is quickly moving toward what it was. And I've seen photographs and some videos. I know it's bad. I don't think it's as bad as it was, but it has descended into a hellhole again in just a couple short years. So it really, things that take generations to build can be destroyed in 90 days.
Well, Ronald Reagan warned that we could lose our freedom in a generation, but we can lose an economy almost instantly.
Yes.
So, so big issues right now, and just a lot to worry about.
Yes.
But a lot to be engaged on.
Oh, so much. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Kim and Carolyn. I'm Carolyn.
I'm Kim.
We will be back again soon with more issues and topics to discuss that you can be involved in as citizens as well. Thanks for joining us. Please make sure to follow us. Find us on Facebook, on YouTube, anywhere you find your podcasts, and we hope that you will join us again soon. Thank you, Fosmu, for your work.
Yep, don't forget about Rumble. We're on Rumble.
We are also on Rumble. Go to Rumble instead of YouTube, please. Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
No bang?
No, I had mine already. That was just like too much. I can only have one a day. Although maybe I should experiment.
Okay, no. Would you bring us in, Kim?
Okay, yeah, we're at the top of a new show, right?
New show.
Okay. Okay.
Oh my gosh, sorry. It's
right.
like too late for us. We've done too much.
Okay, Carolyn's getting punchy. All right.